Well, my loves, I have a guest that I'm very excited to interview today. I'm going to read her bio to you, and then, of course, I'll let her introduce herself too. I have Tracey Yokas with me, and Tracey Yokas creates stuff. This is one of the things I loved about her when I read her website. When she isn't writing about mental health and wellness, she can be found playing with paint, glitter, and glue. She shares about her family's journey with mental illness so others will know that they are not alone. She is dedicated to supporting women in the journey towards authenticity and fulfills her mission by creating safe spaces where art, words, and vulnerability meet in dynamic community. Tracey earned her master's degree in counseling psychology from California Lutheran University and lives in Newbury Park, California with her family. So, Tracey, welcome to the Body Love Binge podcast.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm very excited to be here.
Shall we dive straight in with the 10 fire questions?
I hope I'm ready, but yes, go for it.
All right. Number one, your favorite food.
Pizza, easy.
I am with you on that one, my love. Number two, your favorite smell.
Fresh Christmas tree.
Mm. Favorite sound.
Oh, let's see. Probably my daughter laughing.
Oh. Number four, what word do you use the most, or maybe you've been told you use the most?
Well, I'm sorry to say it's probably the F-bomb.
Same.
I have a little bit of a potty mouth.
And feel free to use that in any way you want in this episode, by the way.
Good to know.
Okay. Number five, describe yourself in 3 words.
Describe myself in 3 words. Resilient, um, dedicated, and let's see, resilient, dedicated, and friendly, a good friend. That's
Hmm.
kind of 2 words, but
Well, you can make your own rules up just because I've
oh,
said
good.
it. It doesn't mean you have to abide.
Okay, good to know.
All right, number six, describe, oh, this might be hard. Describe what it's like to be a mum in 3 words.
Well, that's really hard. Um, Describe what it's like to be a mom in 3 words. Beautiful, exciting, and hard.
Hmm, love. Tea or coffee?
Coffee.
Coffee. Number eight. Oh, would you want to know your death day if you could?
Probably not.
I
I
think
think
I'm,
I think I would just not want to know that.
yeah, same. Your top 3 values, if you don't mind sharing, because I know that can be quite a personal question.
Yeah, that's excellent. I don't mind sharing because it was actually something that I didn't know I had a choice in until I was in my 40s, really. So, my top 3 values, I mean, my top two for sure are courage and creativity.
Mm.
So, I know those right off the bat. For a third one, there's so many good choices, but I don't know if this falls technically under the category of values, but advocacy, because I'm just
Mm.
so passionate about talking about all these things and destigmatizing mental health and all the stuff. So that's really where I am right now, anyway.
Mm. Love that. Really love that, Tracey. And number 10, what do you want people to take away from the conversation we're about to have?
Oh, that's a very exciting question. I hope we can have honest conversations about mothering children with mental illness, particularly children who have disordered eating and depression. I also want to talk about and hope people will take away getting rid of the shame that can come along with that for mothers in particular, and understanding that our past really can impact how we present ourselves in the current and how
Mm.
we deal with all range of things that happen, but really usually this comes into play when something quote unquote negative happens or something goes wrong, and we don't have a lot of skill to deal with that. So I just want to provide some clarity around that for anyone who maybe is experiencing something similar to what we did and
Mm.
help them talk about it.
I love that. And this has come at the perfect time, actually, because I know this has been booked for a while. And I've actually had quite a few people reach out recently asking me to create an episode around parenting and perhaps parenting someone with an eating disorder and how we show up has an effect on that. So what better way to have an expert like yourself to come and talk about this? So
Oh, how perfect.
exactly. So let's dive in and talk straight about your book and why you wrote it, if you don't mind sharing that
Okay,
first.
I don't mind sharing it. So the book is called Bloodlines, a memoir of harm and healing,
Mm.
available in print and digital everywhere books are sold. Back in 2012, my mother died very unexpectedly. And then a few weeks later, my daughter, who was 13 at the time, had her first symptom, which was related to disordered eating. So I had no intention back then, as these events started unfolding, to share publicly about it, had no thought of writing a book about it. But as time progressed and we moved through all the stages of her treatment that we did, and then I moved on into doing some volunteer work for our local NAMI, which is National Alliance on Mental Illness. I
Mhm.
just realized I had felt so alone for so long, thinking nobody could understand my pain or what was happening to us. And of course, I realized that that was not true. So I wanted to share our story openly and honestly because I think that's the beginning of getting rid of stigma. I think
Mm.
it's the beginning of conversation. I think it's the beginning of letting people know that they aren't alone. And sometimes that's all we have to provide for people in times of chaos and pain.
Yeah. Wow. How old was your daughter when she developed her first symptom?
She was 13. It was summer before her eighth grade year of school here in the States. So the
Mm.
last year of middle school. And then she turned 14 shortly thereafter in December.
Yeah, the reason I ask is because what you've just shared, that your mother passed away and then your daughter started to develop these symptoms, is almost identical to what happened to me with my experience. So my grandma, my mum's mum, passed away, and then the anorexia set in, and I went to therapy and all these things and didn't find the right therapist, to be honest, and I didn't really want to get better, so it didn't really help. And that was more on me. But they were saying, oh, this is related somehow. And I really couldn't see that. What's your opinion from reflection and healing? Like, do you think that did have a big effect on your daughter?
I absolutely do think it did. And not right away, but I would say it took several months, many months, for her to be able to identify that herself. But she
Mm.
was the first person who articulated it. And anecdotally, over the years since then, I have heard many, many stories similar to yours, similar to ours, that death, grief, mourning plays a part as a trigger
Mm.
for mental health challenges. And I hope moving forward, we get better as a culture, as a country, as a world of the combination or the effect of death and grief on our mental health challenges.
Mm.
I don't know what that means exactly. I am not a mental health professional, but I just think I've heard so many stories about it. And I feel like in our case anyway, there was such fear around the behaviors, such fear
Mm.
around the symptoms that were playing out that my mother's death and working on that cut kind of a lot lost in the mix a little bit. So I don't know, like maybe if we have a way of handling death better as a
Mm.
culture, especially for teens, because I mean, obviously it affects everyone, but for
Mm.
teens, it's such a fraught time anyway that
Yeah.
maybe that will be helpful in the future.
For sure, because part of my experience, and maybe your daughter's experience too, was me seeing my mum upset. And of course, you and my mum were upset because you just lost your own mother. And so it was everything combined. And as you were sharing, Tracey, back in the day, didn't we used to have death doulas? And that was quite a common experience to have a doula that supported a family through death. So it was more of a spiritual experience other than something that we so often fear in terms of death.
Yeah, I think it was. I mean, I don't have a lot of experience with that personally, but I think, also we didn't know what to do. We, meaning my husband and I. So my
Mm,
mom was in New Jersey, 3,000 miles across the country. My husband and my daughter were here. And I didn't know, should we bring my daughter to the funeral, have her see my
mm,
mother in a coffin? We just did not even know what to do or how to handle it. So we made the decision. She was here, she was in a play, she was living her life, she was doing great. And we thought, why you put her through that? Why
mm,
put her through the trauma? And I doubt that that was the right thing to do, but it's what we did. And so I think she never got her opportunity to say goodbye in a meaningful way until much later with ashes and that kind of
mm,
thing. But it's a very complicated matter, and it's weird because why is it so complicated? Because
mm.
we're all going to die.
Yeah.
So I just think we have a long way to go at handling that better for ourselves and our kids, to your point.
Yes. And I would love to ask how you were feeling at that point. So fast forward until your daughter started having these symptoms. As a mother, how did that make you feel?
Well, predominantly I was confused
Mm,
because even though I'd gotten my master's degree in counseling psychology already when my daughter was young, as I said, I'm not a clinician, but I at least had some knowledge and some experience of diagnoses and things that can
mm,
happen. And I'd heard of eating disorders. Of course, I'm a female in America, all the things. So, and my daughter was going through puberty and exercising a lot and swimming and all this stuff. So when it suddenly she wasn't eating enough to stay alive, it seemed, that was very confusing. Like,
mm,
we all know we have to eat to stay alive. Why are you not eating? And what does this have to do with anything? And I did not know how to handle that. So I took her to the pediatrician who talked to her about, proper nutrition. And of course, that didn't help. So that was the beginning of a slide into much more difficult times.
mm,
But it quickly morphed from confusion to just a big ball of fear, I would say predominantly. Fear and anger too, which is hard to say, but it's also very true. And it's something that was important to me to put in the book because I think we have a lot of shame and get shamed for anger around
mm,
mothering and parenting. And it's a normal emotion. And if we try to pretend like that's not true, we just make our own selves sick. So it
yeah.
was like life was literally one day life was normal, and then like the next day a switch flipped and it no longer was, and it was chaotic and scary. And so there were a lot of things going on, but fear and anger and confusion, I would say, were kind of the top three.
Yeah, and I'm not a mother yet, so I don't know, but I assume from what I've spoken to many mothers that you want to take away the pain of your child and you kind of feel helpless because there's like nothing you seem to do works or helps. That must feel, oh, so challenging.
It's yes, the powerlessness is one of the things that I really fought against.
Mm,
So as a mom, yes, we want to take away our child's pain. We want to fix certainly those of us who had a certain kind of childhood. So that is how my dad handled my childhood. Like he never wanted me to be disappointed or to have frustration. And so I ended up repeating that pattern as a
mm,
mother. So to be powerless, which of course we are powerful in terms of being able to facilitate treatment for our child, but we
mm,
are powerless when it comes to affecting the trajectory itself of the illness, I mean.
yeah.
It adds to the fear, confusion, the anger, because the harder I was trying, I was doing everything I was told. That's the kind of person I am. So if a professional said do this, it's what we did, for the most part. Yeah, it's very, I just want to validate for anyone who may be going through it right now, like the full range of emotions and reaction to all of that are
Mm,
completely normal. And getting into my own therapy was very important because you need a safe space to be able to talk about and deal with all the things that are going on inside of you while
mm.
you're trying to help your child.
Definitely. And I want to go into that more in a moment, but I wanted to speak to something you said that really spoke to me. You said that your father brought you up like not wanting you to feel quote unquote negative emotions, disappointment, anger, frustration. Why is that actually not serving our children if we're trying to do anything to take any kind of painful feeling away from them?
It's just not reality. I mean, we are human beings. We experience a full range of
Mhm.
emotions, and it took me so long to learn this. But actual healthy parenting, secure attachment, if you like that language, whatever language you want to put around it, is all about being able to assist our child, our children in feeling intense negative emotions because you can't escape it.
Mhm.
It's part of life. So instead of trying to squash it or take it away or fix it or whatever, we know that's one of the things, at least I know that's one of the things over many years that I had to unravel conditioning around to be able to be a safe space or a container or just be present and witness to the experiences my daughter was having without trying to take them away or
Mm.
fix them because that also implies that they're wrong, right? If you're
Yes.
trying to solve something for somebody, you're whether you intend to do it or not, you're giving them the message that that's bad, it's wrong, don't be that way, then there's a lot of shame around it and all those things. So I got those messages and others from my childhood, which it took me a long time in this process to unravel and understand. But that was not helpful. But I had already done that part.
Mm.
Like I said, my daughter was 13, so I'd already done that part in terms of the, squashing of certain emotions, which again, of course, we don't do that consciously.
Mm-mm.
We aren't trying to hurt our child, but in fact, if we can't help them in that way, that is a very unhealthy pattern.
Yeah, this is such a key conversation because tangibly, an example that I experienced from my mum, because she loved me so much and she didn't want me to feel any pain, which, like you said, that's inescapable in this life. If I was sad, she would say, "Oh, don't cry." And she would try everything to distract me from the sadness and give me food. Here, this will make you happy. This will make you smile. So, like you say, unconsciously, I was learning, wait, being sad isn't okay. It's not safe because it makes my mum upset. So, therefore, like, even if I feel it, I won't show it because then that makes mum not very happy. And I don't want that. And so, even though our parents are trying to just do the best, it's not helpful. So, what would a tangible example look like of a child who, let's say, they're, I don't know, 7 years old and they're either really angry or very upset about something? What would a healed parent do in that experience?
Well, the first thing I'd like to say is that everybody should check out Dr. Becky Kennedy too, because she's a leading voice on this today. And I wish she had been around when my daughter was that age.
Mm.
But certainly I experienced the exact same dynamic in childhood that you did, except it was my father.
Yeah.
So if I got upset, my father would whisk me away for a treat,
Mm.
never allow me to experience that discomfort on the other side. My mother had narcissistic tendencies, so
Mm.
my body was a constant source of disappointment and critique and failure and all those negative words. She and my pediatrician put me on my first diet when I was 11. So it's just been, I mean, my whole life.
Mm.
So relative to your question specifically, I think first it's important to say that we we want to witness what our children are experiencing and assure them that they're okay and make it normal for them to know that we have big emotions and
Mm.
say, I see how upset you are. It's that old validating language. Like, I see how upset you are. I'm here for you, and it depends on age, all of the correct responses. So I would say for people listening, if they feel, because I know I still usually don't feel like I know the right thing to say. That's an
Mm.
outcropping again of my childhood. So a book like Nonviolent Communication is very important, or getting into therapy. I mean,
Mm.
get into your own therapy if your kids are small and you feel like you don't know how to allow them to be themselves and to be a safe space for them, and really work on that dynamic with a therapist, because I think most of us did not learn these things in our childhood. If we had, we wouldn't, have so many problems. So I want to normalize, like, why would we know how to do this if we didn't experience it ourselves? So there's no shame. There's none of that stuff. We put it on ourselves so much in society too, like we're supposed to know everything.
Yeah.
Um, but get into therapy with someone who, because you probably have some things you have to heal of your own from your childhood that's kind of getting in the way of you providing that for your child. So get, professional help. Now my daughter is almost 26. So we have both done so much work. We can have these conversations. Much She doesn't live here anymore. She lives north of here, but one of our favorite things to do is write letters.
Mm.
Writing letters, old school, not emails, actual letters where
Oh,
we
I
take a
love
pen and a piece of
that.
paper, and this way we have time to think about what we want to say and how we want to say it and really make sure we're making our point, in a
Mm.
mature way and all those things. So I wish I was pro enough to have the exact verbiage, for moms of children who are young to say, but I think the key first thing to know is not what to say, but what not to say,
Mm.
what not to do. And that is, don't try to fix it. Don't try to wipe it away. Don't give somebody food and, here's a cookie, you'll be fine. All those things that were done to us. Don't do those things. And if you can at least remember that, you're way ahead of the game.
Yeah, because I think being able to feel our emotions is very advanced for the way we are as adults in this world, like you say, because we weren't taught how to do that. As far as I'm aware, they don't teach that in school. And so many of my clients, including the past version of myself, the eating disorder was created in an attempt to cope with life because I don't know how to feel emotions. So it's a way to restrict and to numb and to cope with emotions. There's a book that I've recently read called Parenting from the Inside Out. I don't know if you've heard of the book. I can't think of the author. It's an old book, and I'm learning more and more to help my clients with children. And there was a lot of what you just shared in that about being honest to your children. So, for example, if a child says, "Oh, mummy, can I play with some Easter grass that's on top of the fridge?" And as a parent, you don't want them to play with that because it will make a mess. So you lie to the child and say it's not there when the child knows it's there or they can see it. It's about being honest with your child and saying, yes, darling, it is there, but actually now's not the right time to play with it. Let's play with something else instead. So I think, and again, I'm not a parent, so I'm just learning through books at the moment, but being honest with our children and also setting the boundaries, because I didn't have boundaries set and I could do what I want, but I felt very unsafe. So, do you mind speaking a little bit to setting boundaries and how that's actually a healthy, safe way for a child to be in the world? And it involves saying no, doesn't it, to the child?
It certainly does. And I will just say again, I didn't hear the word boundary. I didn't know what that was until I was in my 40s, same as a
Wow.
value. So, as a person who didn't receive any boundaries as a child, I didn't set any boundaries really with my daughter. So,
Mm.
everything you just described are things that would have played out in my household when my daughter was young.
Yeah.
So, not being able to say no, just not so much maybe saying something like it's not there, especially if you could see it, but that idea for sure played out.
Mm.
So again, I think it's so important for anyone hearing this, because if we didn't get it, most of the time we don't know how to do it.
Yes.
So if you have young children, again, and even if you don't have young children, I don't have young children and I'm still in therapy. I got in therapy the first time when I was 30. I'm 55 now.
Mm.
So there's never a wrong time to learn these skills. The thing that's confusing to me still about boundaries and why this is such an important conversation is because ultimately, always, the only person we can actually control is ourselves. And so a lot of people think boundaries have to do with controlling the behavior of somebody else.
Mm.
Certainly saying no to something or not giving a child something sort of controls their behavior. But really what I'm learning is it's about the parent stepping in, to your point, and being that safe space that says, if you can't stop this on your own, like say they're doing something dangerous, I'm going to come in and help you, and like
Mm,
literally calmly removing the child from the dangerous situation and saying, I get that this is really hard and you can't do it, so I'm here to help you and we'll work through it together. And I just want to reiterate for people listening, I was 100% incapable of doing that because I did not know what that even meant. So it's very, very, I've been working on this for a long time. So when you're first coming to the realization of these things, it's extremely painful
mm,
for parents to realize that their lack, because it's really more about a lack of knowledge than, anything else, has in effect very much impacted in a negative way our children. This we do not intend. We love our children madly, all the things. So having someone who, again, that you can work through, there's a lot of guilt and a lot of shame that comes up. It's very hard to acknowledge these things. But I also think, sadly, it's very common.
mm,
So let's talk about it so that we can all help each other learn that this is not helpful way of handling things with our kids, but here's something that's, a little bit better or easier. And certainly, again, hate to sound like a broken record, but I started learning this stuff in therapy because I had to. And if there's any way to get into therapy, please look into that because it's just so important, especially when disordered eating for our kids come into play.
mm,
Because as you so eloquently pointed out, for better or worse, I'm not saying I think we have to, be careful not to say that I caused my daughter to have a mental illness, but certainly we didn't have any methodology to cope with it. And yes, I had not taught her when she was young because I had not learned how to myself from having the same experience or
mhm,
lack of experience, how to deal with having emotions. And so I would say if she were sitting in front of me in your seat, she would say the same things you just said
mm.
about emotions and about not feeling safe and all of those things.
Yeah. And I love how you speak so compassionately about it because you weren't to know. My mum wasn't to know until we do know, and then we can work on ourselves. So how I'm assuming, I hopefully assuming that your daughter is healed now and she's well. Is she?
She is definitely in recovery. Yes. Yep. She's in recovery. She's going to be 26. She's living her best life. She's working. She just got a brand new job and she's living with her partner. And they've been together for 5 years and all the things. So nothing is perfect, right? I mean, she
Mm,
still struggles with things. I still struggle with things, but that's life too. But where we are, I never could have imagined having the difficult relationship that I had with my mom for my entire life up until
mm,
she passed away. I was afraid that I was going to repeat that with my daughter because I didn't really understand how it all came to play.
yeah.
And now I know that that is not the case because we have both done work and we've been through so much and we've come out the other side much stronger and closer than I ever could have imagined. So it's
Mm.
one of my favorite things to talk about.
That's beautiful. How did she recover? I know this is such a huge question, and I know that part of your answer will be you working on your stuff as well as other things, but how did she recover? So how did you go from that first diagnosis to like, shit, like my daughter has an eating disorder. What can we do? Like, what happened after that?
Yeah, well, that's a very detailed and lengthy answer. So first, I just want to say 100% for sure, me doing my own work. And it's like, well, how does
Hmm.
that help? But it does. All we can do is our own work. However,
Yeah.
facilitating treatment for my teenager looked like going to a pediatrician, having my daughter not respond well to the instructions to get a little more nutrition, take care of herself, because of course that was not her frame of mind at that moment. So
Hmm.
then it was individual therapy, which we started 2 times a week, and appointments with a nutritionist and all of those things. Again, every time we upped the ante, for lack of a better way of talking about treatment, she upped it even more. So with therapy and nutrition, she became more ill. So within, I would say 3 months, probably maximum, her first therapist was saying, this isn't working. We have to look at something more significant. So we entered her into a PHP program at a local eating disorder clinic. So that meant she went to school, but then every day after school, she went to the treatment center
Mm.
where it was more intensive group therapy, individual therapy for her. We had to participate in family therapy and group family therapy, just so much therapy. Um, and then she started to self-harm. So there was that aspect to it as well, which is also a coping mechanism.
Mhm.
So they're trying to, the way the director of the clinic, and I put this in the book, described it as a whack-a-mole. Every time you get one symptom to go down, other ones start popping up.
Yeah.
So self-harm, is a serious symptom, and that just made our terror even worse because I was finding her blood all over the house, and things like that. Um, so then we had to pull her out of school. So then it was the eating disorder clinic all day long and the self-harm getting even worse. So they were the ones to recommend residential treatment for the first time. And we accepted that suggestion because we were listening to the professionals. We were doing what we thought was the best thing to do to save our daughter's life. We were
Mm.
terrified that she would maim herself by accident, die by suicide by accident. She was starting to have suicidal ideation. So there was a lot of complicated factors going on. I do want to say, as parents who chose to send our daughter at 14 years old to residential treatment, that I would encourage parents to really think long and hard about that first. We did not have a lot of conversation about that because everybody was too scared.
Mm.
So that's not helpful because the clinicians were as scared as we were. And I get liability and all that, those things, but it's just nobody's making the wisest, nobody's working from their highest self when they're operating from terror.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
it was harmful to her. I mean, at the most vulnerable time of her life, we sent her away. I mean, what kind
Mm.
of message did she make of that? You're
Mm.
so broken, you can no longer even stay home. And
Yeah.
we were devastated. I mean, it was a very, very, very difficult time for the entire family. But that's what we did. And she was kicked out of that first place 2 weeks after she got there because, to your point, she wasn't invested in getting well. And so they knew that before they took her and kicked her out anyway. So it was hospitalization and then home and hospitalization, another residential treatment. So all of this is a long-winded way of saying it can take a very long time.
Mm.
And, you kind of have to go with your gut, which I didn't understand at the time. And also, obviously, take in the information that the professionals are giving you. I do believe that most people working in this industry are there for the right reasons and they're doing their best, but they don't always know and they don't
Mhm.
know what's going to happen. So you have to kind of listen and learn, and it's very complicated. So it was a very lengthy treatment journey. And then when she came home after the second residential treatment facility, where she was for about 6 weeks, if I recall, we did all the process to get her an IEP in the States
Mhm.
here for school so that we would have access to services when she started high school, which she was able to do. There's just no one right answer. I don't know what she would say. I think, as traumatic as help was, we have to get help for our kids because we're not equipped to deal with these
Mm.
things, but also time. Time played a very big part in, having all of these guardrails, learning how to engage in self-care because otherwise you're exhausted and useless a lot if you're not able to take care of yourself. And being in it, trying to be as supportive as possible for the long haul. And now 12 years later, I mean, she got progressively better, but it took a long time. So
Yeah.
there's no easy answer.
Was there a point, and I know it's maybe hard to answer this without asking her directly, was there a point where she then chose to get better and then receive the help that perhaps, I know the inpatient can be very traumatic, But was there something that shifted within her that encouraged her to start actually getting better that you was aware of?
That had to have happened to be true somehow. So
Yeah.
we were lucky in the sense that even as traumatic as everything was, and she did fight us about therapy and treatment, but she didn't always engage, of course, but I
Hmm.
think as she got older, I honestly couldn't tell you if it was like high school. I feel maybe more like it was college, because she was able to go to college, but it was difficult. Transitions are very hard for people who are struggling with their mental health, and they're
Yeah.
hard for everybody. But they're particularly hard if you don't have coping skills that you feel are reliable. So
Yeah.
that transition was very, very difficult, and I think she realized at that point, maybe not on such a conscious level, but that she needed extra support if she was going to stay there, which she wanted to stay there.
Mm.
So then it became kind of less of a, it wasn't, it's hard to, because when I say battle, it makes it sound like she was battling us every step of the
Mm.
way. And sometimes that was true, but it wasn't always true. But I think that may be the moment where it became like, if I want to stay here, I have to engage in this process a little more deeply
Yeah.
because I don't want to have to go home.
Yeah. Okay, so it did come from her. The reason I ask is because my experience of anorexia recovery, you might know my story, Tracey. I, in quote, recovered from anorexia, but then until the age of 30, it just went into bulimia instead. So I wasn't actually recovered. But from the anorexia, I was 12-ish when it started. Thank goodness I was very lucky to have my own horse at the time, and that was my life. Horses, ponies, the stables was my life. And so my mum threatened if I didn't eat this, the horse would be sold. And I knew she meant it. So thankfully for me, even though I'd sit there and like scratch my face and run into the road and scream hateful things towards my mum for making me eat, I did manage to force feed myself. And that started the rehabilitation nutritionally, and then my brain could work properly. So even though it wasn't ideal, and that created a lot of trauma in and of itself, lack of trust with my parents, that I was forced to eat, it did save my life. So I don't know where I would have been if I didn't have the horse, because I would have just not eaten, because the eating disorder fights against anything, doesn't it? It's just so hard, isn't it? So let's talk about self-care for you. What things did you do to take care of you as a mother with a teenager who was in an eating disorder?
That's a really good question too. And I just want to also back up what you're saying. That was a similar experience that we had, that my daughter's
Mm.
symptoms started out very anorexic like. She never received that diagnosis. She didn't meet the criteria, but it did morph and shift over time. So that can
Mm.
also happen, just so people know, because it starts in one thing doesn't mean it's going to stay that way.
Yeah.
But I'm so glad you're bringing up self-care, because I truly believe it's one of the most misunderstood necessities of our day.
Mm.
So I will say, for the first year and two-thirds, probably every week, my therapist was asking me what I could do to take care of myself, and I was outraged. I was
Mm.
outraged. I didn't know what she was talking about. First of all, I completely 100% missed that she was asking me to do what I wanted my daughter to do. Like, that thought did not even enter
Um,
my mind until like years later. But after about a year and two-thirds, when, as I've chronicled, things just kept going and really not getting a lot better, and it was very hard and all the things, I was like, oh, I had hit my personal emotional rock bottom, and realized that I had to find a new way forward.
mm.
Like, the way that I was, and this was in conjunction with a exercise that we had done in the residential treatment facility, that basically, I also chronicle this in the book, was basically the moment where I saw my low self-esteem, like it slapped me in the face. And then I saw that, of all the other parents and kids in the room, did this exercise, and the person who's looked the most like mine was my daughter.
Mm.
So I realized that, again, we kind of already touched on it, but the only thing I could do was start doing my own work to heal that, and then allow my daughter to see me taking my own journey seriously and the work
Yeah.
that I had to do. So the first thing I did, I had to get quiet because I had no mechanism having the type of childhood that I had. I had no mechanism to know exactly what I thought or how I felt or what I wanted to do or why it was important or any of these things. So I got quiet and tried to tune in a little bit to my gut, which is a skill that requires practice. But I
Mm.
returned to creativity first because I had always been creative as a kid. It was a passion, but I got the message, like so many people do, that if you can't do it for a living, it's a waste of time.
Mm.
So, I kind of lopped off that part of myself, and creativity is an inherent human trait. So we're really doing ourselves a disservice by lopping that out of our lives. And I started a mixed media art journaling practice, which is the reference to the paint, glitter, and glue. And I had no idea. I mean, this was just something I was doing in the privacy, sitting right here a lot of the time, in a journal by myself, making pages. And I was talking about things like enoughness and,
Mm.
boundaries and values and all of these things. And it turned out, I did not know this then, but it turned out to be such a crucial tool in my healing. Not only did it lead me to having an amazing community around me now because I teach it and all kinds of things, art for non-artists, because so many of us think we're not artists, so that
Mm.
gets in the way. But another thing creativity does is it's like a mirror held up to our face. So when we're creating things and we very concretely can hear that negative internal dialogue, because sometimes our inner critic is very crafty. And so it's very quiet. It's still running under there, like a subsystem or something. But when we're creating things and we're like, this is stupid, this is ugly, I mean, we might as well look in a mirror and say the same thing to our face if we're saying that to something that we created. So it very concretely enabled me to hear that negative dialogue, to
Mm.
work on that negative dialogue, to work on letting go, to work on my perfectionistic tendencies, which were very strong, to not only accept but embrace imperfection. So it took a while for these things to kick into place, but it really, that and journal writing at first, because I've always been a journal writer, and therapy were the three things that I engaged in the most at first to take care of myself. And when I say that I think self-care is misunderstood, I think we all understand massages. We all understand a good mani-pedi. We all understand a bath and a good book. And I love that stuff
Mm.
too. But the type of self-care that I'm talking about is the kind that comes out of us from the inside.
Mm.
And, being honest with ourselves, healing those unhealthy patterns, developing a spiritual practice, which we're allowed to do for ourselves. It doesn't have to look like anyone else's. All these things, that's self-care from the inside out and healing our relationship with ourself, because the relationship we want with other people is on the other side of the one we have with ourselves. So
Mm.
how do we work on that? By engaging in this type of self-care.
Mm. Yeah, so what I'm hearing is, with a shit ton of compassion, reparenting yourself with curiosity, you are actually leading by example and showing your daughter, without necessarily doing it for this reason, that you're taking your self-care and healing seriously. You're leading by example. And no matter how old we are, especially as teenagers, we look up to our parents and we tend to copy their behaviors, even if we are a bit older. So perhaps that might have had an influence on your daughter then, taking herself seriously. And maybe perhaps unconsciously, she was like watching you take care of you. And then she wanted that for herself too. That's what I think.
I hope so. I mean, I feel like that's true, yeah, I mean, it's so easy. And this is something I talk to parents about when they are coming to me and saying, oh my God, my child is dealing with this, that, or the other. Exactly
Mm.
what you just said. None of us is perfect. There's no
Mm-mm.
such thing.
Nope.
So if something, for a lack of better way of saying it for right now, if something has gone quote unquote wrong with our child, it's so easy to point the finger. I'm not saying we do that consciously. Like, we're parents, we love our kids. So we're not saying you are the problem, but
Mm,
that's kind of the message they're getting.
yeah.
So how can we remove that energy, that negativity, that over focus on the behavior, missing the forest for the trees, by taking responsibility for ourselves? And
Mm-hmm.
again, this is something, it might sound to people who had a different type of childhood experience, that might be like, duh, it's so obvious. But I don't think it is for a lot of people. So learning how to take those glasses off that we're so busy and we're judging. We're constantly judging other people, even our kids. That might be hard for some people to acknowledge about themselves, but that's just how we've been taught to look at the world. We're judging everybody, we're judging everything. We have all these expectations. Some of us didn't learn how to question them, all these things. Well, what we can actually control is ourself, and turning that lens around, taking responsibility for ourselves, for moving it through the world in a way that is actually more helpful to all of our relationship dynamics. But certainly when we have a child that's struggling, what better way to show them your love and investment than getting into your own treatment, or getting into treatment with them and actually listening? It doesn't happen right away. I'm the first person to
Mm.
acknowledge, as I said, it took me a very long time to even understand what the point of all of this was.
Yeah.
But, we were showing up, we kept trying, and we were there, and we didn't give up. And we met kids whose parents had given up, whose mothers had walked away. And I can tell you that had a devastating effect on their children. So, how do we engage in this for the long haul, for
Mm.
years and years and years? Well, by doing our own work.
I freaking love the word responsibility because so many of us avoid it. It doesn't mean blame, because I used to think responsibility was the same as blame and was the same as pressure. That's not true. Responsibility is taking charge of our own shit and healing that. And we say, perhaps consciously, I've not passed that pattern from my mother down to my child. However, only today, I had a client have a realization that was so interesting. So, long story short, her mother always I say made her feel, no one can make us feel anyway, but as a child we see things differently. So as a child, her mother made her feel second best, like she wasn't important, she was never her first, point of attention. And so now this person has her own daughter, and she's purposely made like her relationship with her daughter so her daughter doesn't feel second best. However, the eating disorder she's currently in, that is first before her daughter, that is first before herself, that is first before anyone. So although like physically her daughter comes first, mentally and emotionally, no, because the eating disorder is number one. And that helped her to be like, shit, I am repeating the same patterns, just in a different way. And it's not her fault, but it is her responsibility to work on that and to heal that and to change that. So I think responsibility isn't blame, but it is something we have choice over, creating something different for ourselves and for our children as well.
Oh my God. I cannot tell you how much I love what you just said, because it's
Mm.
100%. So, as I mentioned, I had, an unhealthy relationship with food, weight, body image, all those things. It wasn't called an eating disorder back then.
Mm.
I threw up as a child for no apparent reason. Well, the reason was the stress in my household. So, there was the
Mm.
dynamic between my parents, and then I was supposed to have a baby sister who was stillborn when I was
Oh,
2. And so this was something, silence is another problem, right? When it comes to generational trauma, silence is what keeps these patterns intact.
yeah.
And nobody talked about, 99.9% of the time, I didn't even remember I was supposed to have a sister. Well, I'm certain my parents didn't forget. So all of that unexpressed, unaddressed mourning, grief, anger, all the things were playing out energetically in
Yes.
households, all the time. Well, so fast forward, I have my daughter, and I'm like terrified that I'm going to repeat the same thing. So that's why I got into therapy the first time. And my daughter was 6 months old. She wasn't even eating, food at this point. But I'm like, oh, I was so fucked up. I have to, whatever. So that, I learned some things in therapy at that point, but sometimes insight can take a long time. So now fast forward till she's even older, and I don't want to do the same thing, so I do the opposite thing. I
Yeah.
think, okay, I'm never going to talk about it. I'm not going to make it a thing. All that doing the opposite, to your point, often, because that is not a conscious choice. That is still a reaction. So energetically, it's the other side of the same coin. So
Mm.
understanding the tenaciousness with which these patterns repeat. And there's a great book called It Didn't Start With You. Didn't start with them either. It's
Yeah.
all about how these patterns repeat, and they're so wily, these patterns. And, like shame. I mean, it just digs its way into you and it doesn't want to let go. So it's hard work. But yes, it's so what I was truly surprised to experience. And this really only happened as I was writing this final draft of the book that came into being. One, to your point, compassion was a huge topic that came up. And long into the journey with my daughter, I was tired. And my daughter
Mm.
had come home from residential and she had started self harming again a little bit, which we were told to expect. It wasn't a surprise. But I was, tired and pissed and all the things. And I was talking to my therapist and I'm like, I did this, I've done this, and there's nothing else left to try. And she looked at me. Now, we had been working together for a long time. And she said, well, you could try having some compassion.
Mm.
And I almost fell out of my chair because I'm like, if I'm not the compassionate one in this equation, who is? So I stormed out of there and I did what I always do. I started grabbing books. I started Googling, doing all my research. I was going to, prove her wrong. And of course, this happened so many times in this process. It was like, oh, okay, just one more thing. I did not have a relationship with compassion because I had never been shown one. So I thought I knew what it looked and sounded like. And in fact, those things were important. I'm not saying that I, didn't need to do those things,
Mm.
but that's just the tiniest bit of the equation when it comes to how between human beings are we compassionate with one another. Get the parental power dynamic out of the equation. Our
Mm.
children are people.
Yeah.
Can we look at them without all of that baggage that was put on us by our parents and, all of that stuff? What does actual compassion look and feel like between two human beings? And where do you even start? Well, same as everything else, we start with ourselves. So I had
Mm-hmm.
to learn how to be more compassionate with myself before that could extend out to the people that I care about most. Um, and all of these things compounded into 100% changing the quality of my life in ways that still blow my mind, to be honest.
Compassion is a flavor of love, and love, I have it written on my whiteboard. Love is always the answer, always. And I love how you so beautifully said it always starts with you. So, as so far as tangible things go, we can be saying to our children, your body's perfect as it is, everybody is beautiful. But then if you're berating yourself in the mirror or avoiding dinner because you're trying to be good and trying to lose weight, children pick up more of your unconscious hidden behaviors that you think they're not seeing because you're saying the right things, but it's how you behave, isn't it? So I think I have one big last question for you, but I think what I'm taking from this as well is you being the person you would like your daughter to be for herself first. But with your
100%.
book, so
100%.
what would you like? What do you want mums to take away from your book? And I kind of maybe this is the same question. If a parent is in your position now, or in the position that you were in with a child who is, struggling with an eating disorder or mental health issues, what would you say to them? How would you support them through
I
that?
would Yeah, I would say I see you and feel your pain. I
Mm-hmm.
know how scared you are, how confused, how overwhelmed, how terrified. So, that being said, I would say again, I said earlier, if it's at all possible, get professional help. There is no reason why you should think you should know how to handle these things. You shouldn't. And there are people who study these things for a living for a reason.
Yeah.
So definitely try education is part of that. Become more educated about what's going on, get professional help to help yourself and to help your child because that's ultimately what we want to do. But really what I want so that is one thing I really want parents to take away, and moms in particular, is to not, it's very isolating. I withdrew from my life for a long time.
Mm,
If you can resist that urge, it makes sense that you pull back because there's a lot going on. But if you have that one friend, that one family member, and if not, that's okay too. That's what therapy can be for. But try to resist the urge to isolate yourself completely from your life, because that digs in more. Actually, all
mm,
those shameful feelings and things get dug in there even stronger. And I would say, if you're someone who has trouble with the concept of embracing self-care, instead of looking at it like something you're doing for yourself, because I mean, technically it is something you're doing for yourself, but it is the foundation for you being able to help your loved one, your child, your family in the healthiest ways. So don't look at it like, I'm some selfish biatch who's going to go close the door and take a bath for 10 minutes. I mean, again, that's maybe not the best example, but you know what I'm saying.
yeah.
Look at it as, this behavior of me finding ways to take care of myself is enabling me to show up for my family and be with them in healthy, positive ways. And if you can make that mind shift, several of my insights over the journey, because I think this is how insight works, were mindset shifts, really. They
Yeah.
were looking at, something I understood one way and realizing that it could be understood, and in fact, it made more sense to look at it an entirely different way. And sometimes those shifts seem very small, but inside of us, they are huge.
Yes, it's not necessarily what's happening, it's your perception on what's happening, which creates your own reality, and then how you then behave after that perception change, which can be hindering or healing to the situation.
Absolutely. Yep.
And so
Absolutely.
just please share your book title again and where we can find it. And also, I think looking at your contacts that you sent me, you work with people in a creative way too. So how can people work with you and where can they find your book?
Oh, thank you. Yes. So again, the book is called Bloodlines, a memoir of harm and healing by Tracey Yokas. In the States, it's available everywhere books are sold, and it is available digitally. So I don't exactly know
Great.
how that works for people far away, but it is available that way. And yes, so my website is my name, Tracey Yokas, plus the word creates. So it's traceyyokas.com. And my first name is TraceyYokas, creates.com. And on there, there's a button for the toolkit. And yes, I teach mixed media art, like for beginners, art for non-artists, art for your soul, for pleasure, for having fun, for being in community. I am also in the process of, I have a free 32-page workbook that goes out for parents or people who have a loved one struggling with mental illness to hopefully help alleviate fear and overwhelm. I am trying to have dialogue with people. I'm an open book. If someone wants to email me, it's my name at gmail.com to answer questions. But yeah, the toolkit page on my website is where the most of the juicy stuff lives. Creating classes to soothe the inner critic, to make more conscious choices, all the things that I kind of had to learn how to do along the way. I'm hoping to share with people who are interested in learning similar tools.
Wow, you are doing such incredible work in the world, Tracey. So thank you for what you're
Thank
doing.
you. Thank you for same. I mean, these are such important conversations, and I really appreciate that you're getting them out there and doing this. It's incredibly important work.
Of course. Well, thank you so much for your time and your wisdom and your knowledge. And like you've said, listeners, if you want to reach out to Tracey, please do so. Don't struggle alone. Go on a website, get that toolkit. And again, thank you so much, Tracey, for being here. Much love to you
Thank
and
you,
our
Victoria.
listeners.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.